If your team got guaranteed money, tell them call me.
Whoop. Make me say, my. I done been around the world.
Yeah, I was made for this.
Player Performance with J.A. Cavalier.
Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Player Performance College Football Edition Conference Championships. My God, this season has flown by, and we have a beautiful slate of games that we're going to talk about today. Some with motivation, some with not, but we will talk about each and every one of these. Some of the major conferences, of course, we'll give you a pick outside of the main P4 conference. And I'm joined, as always, with my man, Coach Rick, who is back from a beautiful Thanksgiving week. How you doing, my friend? How you doing?
Wonderful. Thanksgiving was wonderful. Good to be with family and, roll out some ATVs and jump in the hot tub and, have about 84 beverages of the adult version. It was fun. Great to be back, back here north of Detroit. 4 or 5 inches of snow on the ground. Gotta love it. But it's that time of year, which only means that, it's, conference championship time. It's bowl season. It's time to put a playoff together. We're almost at the end. It's been a great season, and looking forward to sharing some insight on these games that we're going to see this weekend.
Yeah, the trick of conference championships is you got to find the motivated teams. Of course, there's going to be some playoff implications of some of these teams that we're talking about, the ins, the outs. There's teams on the bubble that aren't even playing a game, including my Irish, that are going to be very into the TV this coming Friday and Saturday, mostly on Saturday. But we're going to start with the top 25 games, and we're going to start with the major conferences. Without further ado, let's get into the slate here, and let's start with the first game that is on the board here. BYU going to play Texas Tech once again. Revisionist history and a little bit of a rematch from the previous game. This is going to be taking place in Jerry's World in Arlington, Texas. 12 p.m. is going to be the kick to start us off on Saturday. And, of course, you got a BYU team that is 11-1 on the year, won 3 straight. Of course, their only loss was to Texas Tech. And Texas Tech, one loss was to Arizona State, who was in the playoff last year, but they've won 5 straight and absolutely just mowing their competition down besides that game. I'll pass to you, Coach Rick. What do you think of this game? Do you think Texas Tech, the Raiders, are going to do work on the Cougs, or is BYU going to prevail there with Sakataki signing an extension to this team?
Big-ass extension. He turned down Penn State, which I think that plays a role in this game. Interestingly, I do. And I'll share this first, though. As a former, college assistant and a high school head coach, I've been in games like this. In fact, before we got on, I was just thinking about this. We've all talked about the Connor Stallions thing, and all that bullshit. But, when I coached for Coach Kurt Signetti's dad, and one of my first big deals was to go and do a Connor Stallions. I had to go film a team and, break down their signals and basically steal them. And we played a team that season, and I sat up in the booth and called all the plays, and our defense had a great game, and, we won big. Well, we ended up playing that team in the national playoffs about 6 weeks later, and we beat them again, but, man, it was a hell of a lot tougher. And I can remember being in a situation as a high school head coach too. We played teams twice in a season, usually once in the regular season, then again in the playoffs. It's hard to beat a team twice. That doesn't mean it can't happen, but it's hard to beat a team twice. So, you talked about Texas Tech, how they've just been mowing teams down. I mean, this is an outstanding football team. Their offense is elite. It's built around the air raid. Baron Morton, I mean, the kid's good. Is he an NFL caliber player? Maybe. I don't know. But the system, I think I could plug a kid in there and he would just do well. Defensively, I think that's where Texas Tech, I don't know if they get enough, recognition for as good as their defense is. God, that freaking linebacker, God, he's good, man. He'll be playing on Sunday, guaranteed. But you got to look on the other side. And I mentioned that Kalani Sitake that signed the contract. I think that's a hell of a boost for those kids to know, hey, my head coach had a chance to go, somewhere else, and he said, you know what, no, I'm staying here, which I like. I think it's a great move for him. I'm a fan of guys who stick around and don't think the grass is greener on the other side. I think it gives BYU some motivation. I don't, do I think they can beat Texas Tech? No, I don't. But I do think they can keep this one closer than the first time. I'm not official there yet on this one, but right now I'm leaning towards BYU plus 12.5.
I'll give the point counterpoint on this one, and here's the problem. And obviously, yes, I always think about that when teams play each other. It's hard to beat at the same team twice. That is shown validity over the season after season. Before, you win the first matchup, and then the other team wins the second matchup. I think we've seen Alabama and Georgia do that multiple times over the years. But with this situation here, I think it would correlate to the line. It really isn't. It opened at 11.5, and now it's driven up to almost 13. And there are 13s on the board. They're starting to dip down. They're dancing around between 12.5 and 13.5 currently. I don't know if it's going to ever hit 14, but we will see. Or if it dips back down to the median at 11.5. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But I'm just looking at the line. So the line last time it closed at 13.5, and that was at Lubbock, and that was at home. But this is a neutral site this time, and I'm not seeing the dip in the line to kind of get it towards the median, and that's the problem I have on this one. It means the books are probably trying to are leaning towards the Texas Tech side and expecting that BYU money to be coming in there. And when we look at the numbers on this one, the strength is on the Texas Tech side. I mean, they score 41 points per game, 471 yards per game. That's 7th in the country. They put up 6 yards per play. The defense is dominant. It's been dominant all year. We're talking 11, only giving up 11 points per game. That's 2nd in the country, 267 to their opponents yards per game, 4th in the country, and 3.9 opponent yards per play. That's 2nd in the country. I mean, all their numbers are really good. Granted, their schedule is a little bit weaker than BYU's, so that you got to take that into account as well. And BYU has some strong numbers. They put up 31 points per game. They're only giving up 19 points per game. But both teams are a little bit more run-oriented, and that kind of plays good into the Texas Tech rush defense. Texas Tech rush defense only gives up 2.4 opposing yards per carry, 2nd in the country, and 71 opposing yards per game, and that's 1st in the country. And that's going to be a problem. If BYU can't run the ball, I don't suspect this young quarterback to be able to just whip it down the field and get some added production and take advantage of the Texas Tech defense that way. And you mentioned, I mean, 29-7 was the first matchup. That's what the outcome in that game is. And from a numerical standpoint, they got outgained. There wasn't any outliers that were in there. They just absolutely dominated BYU up and down the field, and the line is basically the same. And also, we got to take it. Texas Tech has just been money in the bank. I mean, 9-0 ATS is a double-digit favorite this year. They're 11-1 ATS overall. And I know BYU's been a cash machine themselves, but I can't deny these Red Raiders. They spent $24 million on this team for a reason, and it is because they wanted to dominate. Now, we will talk about opportunities down the road in the college football playoff if and people say like Texas Tech has nothing to play for in this game. Well, who's to say that Texas Tech with 2 losses will get into the college football playoff if they lose to BYU? That's what I'm saying on this one. I think everybody's going to be playing, and I think Texas Tech has the ability to get it done. So I'm not there officially, but I do think Texas Tech has to be a look. We will see if this makes my card for the Saturday slate. All right, let's talk about the next game that's on the board here. Let's talk Georgia and Alabama. It seems like we see these two teams in the SEC championship virtually every single year. Well, not last year because it was Georgia and Texas. But this year, we bring it back. First time since 2021. Georgia and Alabama in the championship, and it's the same type of scenario we've seen before. Alabama needs the game. Georgia might not need the game, but I don't know who's going to be playing harder here. Is it going to be Georgia and Alabama? I do have a take on this game, but I'll pass it to you, Coach Rick. What do you think about this SEC championship at Mercedes-Benz?
It's another rematch, right? It's it's hard to beat a team twice, and it's been hard for Georgia to beat Alabama. Jesus, yeah. Right? 1-10 in the last 11 games. But that one win came in a national championship game. Is this the type of game that Kirby Smart will get them up for? And and like you said, do they have something to play for? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not any. I haven't declared a side yet. I might be leaning one way or the other, but I'd kind of look at the total, just because there's kind of some discrepancy in some numbers. And these two teams, when they play, typically they've put up some points, and then they play this year, right, with a total at what, 54 and a half.
Yep.
And they come in and 24-21. And both of these again, two defenses that are outstanding. Kirby Smart, I mean, he's synonymous with defense, and Georgia has been phenomenal over the last couple of weeks of the regular season. God, just killing people defensively. But in Alabama, you can't discard their defense. They've always been stout. The whole team's under 20 points a game. But if you look at that first game this year, total of 54, and then all of a sudden, a couple weeks later, now it's 47 and a half, right? And I think that's where it opened. I don't think we've even seen any movement yet on that line. So, what are they telling you? Well, I think they're telling you that, Kirby Smart is pretty damn good coach. And I'll say this just so you're aware. Kirby Smart's been in a couple of these rematch type games, where you've played the same team in the same season. And in the rematch games, he and Georgia are 3-0. So, again, I'm not saying I'm back in Georgia yet. Maybe I don't know if I'll get there, but I definitely like the total under 47 and a half. I think the books are telling us this is going to be a low scoring, tight game in the SEC championship.
I originally had the same thought that you did.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, let me just take a step back. Because the problem with this is we already saw an under between these two teams at 54. We saw it at 24-21. They did dip the line down. I do agree with that one, but I don't know if it mattered from a book perspective. Usually you see the correlation like that, it usually means that the under is happening. However, when these teams meet on a neutral site, they score points. And more than 47 and a half points. I think the outcome they average is 56 points per game when these guys meet on a neutral field. They met 5 times on a neutral field since 2017. And this is the lowest. I agree. This is the low. There's the counterpoint that this is the lowest total that it's been since 2017. But they're still scoring over these totals at 46 and 50. And it hasn't even mattered in a lot of these cases. And I think with these two teams, offensively, we know what Georgia's going to do. They're going to run the ball. 58% of their plays are rush plays. They average 191 rush yards per game. Now, with the Alabama defense, when you look at them from a whole, they only give up 135 rushing yards per game. However, when they play a top rushing team, they give up some yards. 6.9 yards per carry they gave up to Georgia in game 1. 7.1 yards per carry they gave up to Vandy. 5.8 yards per carry they gave up to Missouri. So they can give up some rushing yards when you're playing a good rush defense. And I think you could see that on that fast track at Mercedes-Benz. And Alabama wants to pass the ball. That's their bread and butter. Jay Simpson likes to just hurl it out and throw it to the receivers. 54% pass completion percentage. Not completion percentage. I'm sorry, pass play percentage. 7.8 yards per attempt. 279 pass yards per game. And then Georgia, that's their weak point is the pass defense. 61% pass completion given up to opponents. 210 overall, but I said, we're going to top passing teams. We're talking about Tennessee. They gave up 371. They gave up 280 to Bama in game 1, 263 to Ole Miss, 251 to Texas. Yes, if you can pass the ball, you can get yards on Georgia. And that tends to lead to points in most cases. Both teams tend to ramp up the offenses when they play that step up in class, too. We have to look at that. Georgia put up 44 points versus Tennessee, 43 points versus Ole Miss, 35 points versus Bama. Bama offense on the other side, 30 points versus Vandy, 37 points versus Tennessee. Bama only scored 21 versus Oklahoma. I do get that, but they outgained them by 194 yards in that game, and they turned the ball over 2 times in the red zone to Oklahoma. So take that into account. They kind of missed, an opportunity to get another 14 points in there. 14 points would be 35 points, and that could have been what Bama could have gotten if they didn't make the mistakes and the turnovers. The teams meet on neutral sites, like I said, 56 points per game. Every time they meet on a neutral site, last game did go under at 24-21. Total was 54, yes. But I do believe that the over could hit in this one. These teams have been a little bit too hot with the under lately. Of course, Bama, 5 out of their last 6 games have been to the under. However, look at the opponents that they played. Not good offenses. I mean, that's the problem with this one. So I wanted to get to the under, and I said, well, wait a second. Look at this counterpoint that I have here. There is an ability, and I haven't got there officially. I think the over has validity here at 47.5. But I'm going to look at that a little bit keen on Friday night to see if that actually makes my card. All right, let's go to the next play that's on the board here. Let's go to the Big Ten Championship. Indiana versus Ohio State. I'm sure. I don't know if this is going to be a good game, a great game, or nobody gives a shit game between these two teams. But I can't imagine Curt Cignetti doesn't want to win the Big Ten championship. And Ryan Day in Ohio State hasn't been to a Big Ten championship in quite a while. So you could get motivation from both sides on this one. However, both are sitting number 1, number 2, and they may be thinking about what's coming up down the road. However, these guys are probably sitting at a bye week anyway. So you keep talking yourself up and down about the motivation on this one, but this is the game that I believe you can't find the clear-cut motivation at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, Indiana. But I do believe Ohio State knows how to play here, and Indiana has never been. So I'll pass it to you, Coach Rick. What do you think of this?
You mentioned, hey, do these teams have anything to play for, et cetera. As a college player, like we actually had a conference championship game, and they actually still do in the PSAC. But it was coached like it was any other game, and it was coached like, hey, we're going to win the championship. You know what I mean? So. And I think, Kurt's he's built like his dad. Like, it's a football game and we're going to win it and we're supposed to win it. And Ryan Day's doing the same thing. Like, this is Ohio State. We're the defending national champion and we're playing for a Big Ten title. We didn't win it last year. And you know what? We're going to win it this year. So I think they both go in motivated to win. What do I like as far from a betting perspective? I mean, these are, there's a reason why they're number 1 and number 2. You can look at both offenses. You're like, oh, they score, they throw points, they run the ball. Julian Sand, Fernando Mendoza, blah, 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 right? They're all good. They're all good. But Jesus, look at the defense. So these number 1 and number 2 in scoring defense, Ohio State 1, Indiana 2. Like, these are, they're number 1 and 2 for a reason, like I said, right? So what do you do? How do you split the hairs? Blah, blah, blah. You can look at what this line is compared to last year. Okay, great. Indiana has, you can talk about some revenge. We lost last year 38-15. Now we want to get back and, win the Big Ten title. But you can talk about that. I like this because Indiana, it's typical of a Curt Cignetti team. It's typical of his dad's teams too that I played for and coached for. We play well in the first quarter. Like, we come out and we always play well early, first quarter, first half. So right now, my best bet in this game right now is Indiana in the first quarter, plus 2.5. They're the dog, right? So they've covered this in all 12 games this season. And if you look statistically, they are one of, I think, 2 teams that are in the top 10 in first quarter scoring and first quarter scoring defense. They actually did it last year. Last year, Indiana was ahead 7-0 at the end of the first quarter. Then, of course, they got their ass handed to them. They did. And I don't think Cignetti lets that happen again. And coming into this season, I was one of them. I was one of the people that was like, man, I don't know if they can do what they did last year. And after about 2 or 3 games, I was like, nah, this Indiana team is better than last year. Now, does that mean can they beat Ohio State? I actually think they can. For now, like I said, my best look right now is just Indiana in the first quarter.
I like that look, actually. I mean, just look at what happened with Ohio State and Michigan. Ohio State notoriously
Yep.
just kind of starts at a snail's pace, and then they
Yep.
just kind of ramp up second, third. That's kind of what they did last week. Uh, it's hard to pick between these two teams because, yeah, you said numerically they're virtually identical. I mean, Indiana's got a plus 33 point differential, outgaining opponents by 233 yards per game. Ohio State's got a plus 29 point differential, outgaining opponents by 235. A little bit of an edge on the defensive side. I mean, Ohio State kind of owns most of the statistics: opposing scoring, opposing yards per game, opposing points per play, and yards per play. And then Indiana is second in opposing scoring, sixth in opposing yards per game, fifth in opposing points per play, and 12th in yards per play. On the offensive side, though, Indiana does have the edge. I mean, they do score more points, 42 to 34. They're ninth in yards per game, where Ohio State is 27th. 10th, Ohio State is 10th in points per play, but Indiana is fourth. So there is a slight edge there for Indiana. You could question some of the teams they played, but I mean, I don't know what team that be. It's like Indiana beat Oregon, and then Ohio State beat Michigan. So I think those are the comparable opponents on that one. The pace of play is pretty interesting when you look at these two teams because both teams love to play slow. They chew that clock right down to the last second before they hit the hike button. And then, I mean, we're talking about Ohio State ranked 136 in seconds per play. Indiana is 125th in seconds per play. Is probably because they blow out teams and they're just trying to chew the clock and get the hell out of there, I would say. But, I mean, could be a different scenario in this spot. But what we've seen is these teams don't go to the line and they're not going to try to play fast on you. Last year, you mentioned the game, a little bit of the game. 38-15 was the score. 10.5 point home favorites for Ohio State at the shoe. And now they're a shorter favorite here, but the total was 52.5, and that game kind of dropped to 48 here, and that kind of makes sense. And when you look at the stats on this one, Ohio State is 4-0 ATS, 4-0 to the under is the favorite of 15 points or less this season. Indiana is 3-1 to the under when Indiana is a favorite of 14 points or less as a dog. So I'm thinking this is going to be low scoring between these two teams. So take advantage of the defenses. These teams have not seen defenses quite like this year. You could say Oregon has a good defense. Like I said, not to the caliber of Ohio State. And you could say the same thing about Michigan versus Ohio State, but I was like, no, Indiana has a better defense. So I think we're looking at it under here. So Indiana, Ohio State under here at Lucas Oil is where I'm going with this one at 48. All right. We got one last P4 game here, and we got to go to the garbage one, the ACC, right? Let's go to Duke and Virginia at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, North Carolina at 8 p.m. on Saturday East. This was a great game last year. Fortunately, it was SMU and Clemson. Both teams did make the playoff, but this one's going to be a little bit of a different factor in here. Virginia has more to play for here. Duke is just happy to be there, and I don't know how Duke got in there statistically. They just won games between teams that had a better record. That's why Miami didn't get in. It's pretty crazy because you had a 4-way tie or a 3-way tie, but I was trying to figure out why didn't it just go to the team with the better record overall. But that's the bylaws that they signed. So here we are. Duke 7-5. Virginia better record at 10-2. What do you think about this one, Coach? Can Virginia go out there and dominate this Saturday?
Hell yeah. I mean, you're Duke, you're 7-5. I was going to say, how the hell did they get into this game? But I mean, I know how they did, but Jesus, talk about backing into a championship game. And sorry, but it ain't happening for you, Duke. And I get it. You're playing in your home state kind of thing. But again, here's another situation where you have two teams that played each other, right? And now Virginia was a 5-point dog at Duke. Now they're a 3.5-point favorite in Duke's home state, right? I mean, Charlotte isn't all that far from Durham, but like you said, Virginia just has so much more to play for. Are they going to get into the playoff? Probably not, but a win will at least give them a shot. And I think they're the better football team. I think both these teams can score. Both have great offenses. But the difference in this game really is Virginia's defense, probably one of the more overlooked units. Way back beginning of the season, I was saying about how Missouri was overlooked, and I think people caught on to that. But this Virginia defense is legit. Like he went out and got some dudes in the portal last year, and they're holding teams to 20 points a game. Which when you hold, especially in the ACC where everybody's winging it, you hold teams to 20 points a game, like you're going to win, a boatload of games, and they have. So this easily just the more motivated team at a solid number, -3.5. Like all day, it's Virginia -3.5.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. This is the Cavs all day with
Yeah.
Virginia Tech. I mean, I'm not Virginia Tech. Sorry, God, Virginia. I don't want to mess that up. We'll change that rivalry around. But the way I looked at this is go look at the last 4 games of how these teams have performed. Virginia has a huge advantage. They have a plus 10 point differential. They're outgaining opponents by 196 yards per game. On the other side, for Duke, plus 1 point differential, getting outgained by 101 yards per game. That's the difference between these two teams currently. And the biggest variable between these two teams, and you mentioned it, this underrated defense there for Virginia. And what I like about what Virginia's doing right now, especially in the last 4 games, their defense has drastically improved from the beginning of the season. They're only giving up 200. Last 4 games, they've given up 230 yards per game to their opponents, 2.3 yards per game per carry in the rushing game, 48.1% pass completion percentage, 153 passing yards per game, and 15 points per game. That's what they're giving up to opponents right now. Duke, on the other side, they're allowing their opponents to get 445 yards per game, 4.6 yards per carry in the rushing game, 67.6 opposing pass completion percentage, and 293 opposing pass yards per game. This team is way worse as far as statistics go than what Virginia is. You can say revenge all you want. I know Duke lost at home 34-17, but they were 4.5, 5-point favorites in that game at home, and now the line is flipped to the other side. Yes, at that time, Duke did have value, but now I think the value is completely plummeted to this one. And go look at, if you don't believe that Virginia won that game, like they crushed them. They outgained them by 255. They held Duke to 255 yards of total offense in that game, which was their worst performance of the year, and they got outgained by 285 yards in that game. So really, UVA should have beat them by more. That's what that number is telling me there. And I think we're going to be seeing something similar here. The total is 59. It was 59.5 in the first matchup. It's dipped to 57.5 on the neutral site. The under is hitting 7 straight games for UVA. We could be seeing something like that. However, Duke has given up a lot of points and gotten a lot of points in that sample size too. They did get the under in the previous matchup at 59.5. But this is just a side spot. This is UVA playing with motivation, trying to get to the college football playoff versus a Duke team that had no idea. The cards fell as they may. SMU misses a field goal against Cal late at night, and they go, wait a minute. We're going to the ACC championship? I'm trying to get rid of this hangover. They're not going to be prepared for this one. Virginia's going to get this spot all day long. Give me Virginia -3 all day long in that game.
Wow.
All right. Yeah. Go Cavs. All right, let's go. All right, we did it for you. Those are the best top P, not the best, the top P4 conferences right there. We gave you a look. Make sure you hit the like button on this video as you're watching it now. Play a performance and J Cavalier channel, and make sure you drop a comment as well to get to the algorithm of all algorithms that YouTube deems fit. And check us out on social media platform at Why Lose Gunz, at Why Lose Coach. And we're going to give you 1 game each, because this is a short card this week. We usually give you 2 outside the spectrum of the top 25, but short card this week. So I'll start with you, Coach. You are looking at this beautiful baby with AAC, with North Texas and Tulane. And they're going to be playing in Nolens on this one. Of course, 2 coaches that are looking at their futures at different programs. Ullin Stadium is a spot north, but they're going to compete here with Sumrall and Eric Morris. And it's going to be an exciting one with a North Texas team that's 11-1 on the year. You have a Tulane team that's 10-2 on the year. Both have a shot to get the CFP with a win. I'll pass it to you, Coach. I have an idea what I want to do with this game, but this isn't my game. This is yours. There you go.
I'm sure a lot of people have some ideas about this game. Before you do, be careful. That's why you watch us, right? Of course, if I'm picking one of these extra games, it has to be North Texas, right? Love me some Mean Green. And you mentioned, one of the interesting takes on this game is that both head coaches will not be at these schools next year. However, both of these guys will coach this game. And then whoever wins this game still has a really, really good shot at making the college football playoff. And if they do, that head coach will coach in the playoff as well. Both those guys negotiated that into their new deals at their school. So Eric Morris, who I said a couple weeks ago should be on some guys' radar, finally he was hired by Oklahoma State, and Sumrall, of course, going to Florida. Now does that mean both these teams, their players going to be like, oh, my coach is leaving, blah blah blah? No, this is the days of the transfer portal. And, I wouldn't be surprised if you see a lot of, Tulane guys playing at Florida next year, a lot of North Texas guys playing at Oklahoma State. You mentioned it. Both teams have a lot to play for. But really this comes down to, a couple things. And one is very simply just take a look at the history between these two teams. They played last year and I believe the year before or the year before that. So they've played twice in the last couple seasons. Tulane was a pretty sizable favorite in both, at least a touchdown in both games. Last year, they played at North Texas. Tulane's a 7.5-point favorite. They did win the game and cover. But now you're playing at Tulane, right? The AAC, one of the few conferences where, the championship game is still at the higher seeds home field. At Tulane, and now North Texas is a 2.5-point favorite. So that should tell you really all you need to know.
Yep.
If you need more, like this is the most prolific offense in college football. All right. Eric Morris will take a guy who never started a high school football game and he'll put him into his offense and he will tear you a new ass. And that's Drew Mestemaker. He's leading the FBS in passing. Like the kid's outstanding. Like I said, never started a high school football game, but he's tearing it up at North Texas. Tulane defensively solid, but susceptible. And I think North Texas will have their way with him. I like North Texas minus 2.5, but I'll say this because I'm sure a lot of people will be like, well, these two teams are going to score a shitload of points and we're going to jump on the over and blah, blah, blah. I would just say be careful. If you're going to look into that, do one of two things or maybe even both. I think you get more value if you take North Texas's team total. It's at 34.5. They've scored 35 or more points in almost every game this season. I think they've gone over 50 in 5 of their last 6. And like I said, Tulane's a solid defense, but this offense is just outstanding. And if you like the over, you might want to compare that to the one bet that I always bring up, which is both teams to score a certain amount of points. This game, I don't know if there's all that much value here in this one, unless you really think Tulane's going to get it done, because they could. Because Jake Retzlaff, pretty good QB. North Texas pass defense, not so great. If you think Tulane can get to 30, you might want to look at both teams to score 30 or more, because that one's still plus money, plus 130 or more. Right now, both teams score 25 or more is at minus 167. So, that one's, I'm not a fan of that. But like I said, if you do like the over, be careful. Take a look at one of those other looks, North Texas team total or both teams to score 30.
Yeah, that's perfect breakdown of that game. It was like you have to keep in mind, yes, North Texas is an over team. They're 9-3 to the over this year. They're 5-0 to the over on the road. But Tulane is 5-1 to the over at home, so you have to be careful. I mean, you need two teams to get to an over. Yeah. You have a high over here, so you're asking a lot from North Texas against a really good defense. And you're asking a lot from Tulane that, quite frankly, isn't going to go and try to blow you out on the points. If they get into a track meet with North Texas, they'll lose every single time, especially the number one scoring offense, the number one in yards per game, and number one in yards per play. That is what North Texas is this season. But we talk about coaches that are going to different programs. I got to bring up my guys from the G5. We got to bring up Troy versus JMU. All right? This is for the gun belt. Everybody knows about the gun belt, and they know how much I love JMU. We go way back. We go way back to Kurt Signetti days. Early Kurt Signetti days when these guys jumped from FCS to FBS. Kurt Signetti said toodaloo after 2 years in the FBS and went to Indiana. But didn't matter because Bob Chesney stepped in and kept the machine rolling. And by God, is that machine rolling efficiently like Kurt Signetti had never left. They're 11-1 on the year, vying for another college football playoff spot. Things could happen. You know, Duke could win against UVA. Do I think they're going to win? Absolutely not. However, they still have a chance playing on Friday night, and then they just have to wait for the Duke and UVA game, I'm thinking. But Troy's coming off back-to-back wins himself, off a big win versus Southern Miss, a surprising win versus Southern Miss because everybody thought it was going to be JMU and Southern Miss in this game, but it's not. It's going to be Troy. Troy hasn't been a strong team all season long. You look at their numbers. They only average 24 points per game. That's 83rd in the country, 317 yards per game of total offense. That is 116th in the country, folks. 4.5 yards per play, 127th in the country. I do not know how this team has 24 points per game. I can't figure it out. Troy's defense gives up 24 points to their opponents. That's 56th in the country. They give up 389 to their opponents, 75th in the country, and they give up 5.5 yards per play, and that is 66th in the country. And let's talk about the JMU stats at both sides of the ball. They're 9th in points per game. They're 17th in yards per game. They're 21st in yards per play. They put up 37 points per game this season, and they only give up 16.5 to their opponents. That's 10th in the country, folks. This is a defense that is great. It's dominant, and their offense is dominant as well. And JMU, all they want to do is they want to run the ball. If they could run the ball efficiently, forget it. You are not going to keep up with this offense. They're 10th in rush play percentage. They're 5.3 yards per carry. They're 234 rushing yards per game. That is ranked 8th in the country. And we look at Troy. Troy's been exposed in the run game. 4.6 yards per carry given up to opponents. That's 84th in the country, and they give up 181 to their opponents. That is 101st in the country. And mind you, they have not faced a team like JMU this year. This is against some pretty weak opponents. They're giving up that many yards. And JMU, every time you make them a heavy favorite, by God, they cash tickets. They're 3-1 ATS as a favorite of 20 points or more this season. Also, the under is enticing on this one because when the total is less than 50, which we're seeing here, which is indicating you got a high spread and a low total, which means lopsided, which means probably domination there for JMU. When the total is less than 50, the under is 3-1 in those games. Troy won their big game last week versus Southern Miss. That was their highs of highs. This is another team like Duke, happy to be here. How the hell did we get here? We're just glad to be here. Now we got to go travel to Harrisburg, Virginia, and go get belt to ass to JMU. And by God, that's where the line is going on this one. I don't care what the line is. You could wait till closing. It could be 36, and I'm still taking JMU. But right now, it's minus 23, and I'm just going to take the gift that keeps on giving, which is JMU as a heavy favorite. JMU, minus 23 as the play. Did I sell that enough? I think I did.
I think
all right.
You're playing it, lay it.
Yeah, let's go Dukes. All right, we did it, folks. That's the conference championship for you. We gave you the 4 major conference games, and we gave you 2 more on top of that. You want to see the rest of our plays? Well, you're going to have to go to our Telegrams. You have to go to our Instagram, @Wylose_Guns, @Wylose_Coach. Coach, what do you got cooking there over at Wylose?
I stirred it up real good, pulled it out. It's an all-sports package. So we've got college football. We got pro football. We just started college basketball season. We're off to a pretty solid start so far. And I am offering an all sports, all plays, all bets, max, best bets, whatever. All of them from now through the Super Bowl. And that is for the one low price of 100 denarii.
Woo! There we go. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna have some deals going around. You just gotta pay attention on my Telegram. I dropped the Cyber Monday $100 season elite package. Got a few bites on that one, and we're gonna be cooking through this conference championship. Maybe I give out another deal, but college basketball is still cooking. Got college football, and of course the NFL is gonna be rocking too as well. So Joe, check me out on Telegram. You can go get the link on @lose_guns. But that's gonna do it here for Play Performance. College football conference championships. We should be back. We'll probably do a bowl show here, maybe a college football playoff show. We'll figure it out and schedule it properly for the boys. We have to give you the information and the analysis. Pay the bills. I'm Gunz Picks. That is Coach Rick. Let's cash it to us. Let's dominate the board. And as always, Coach.
Giddy up.
And let's keep dancing. Bye.
Cut my life into pieces. This is my